Oh boy, I'm not going to enjoy this one. Sword and Sworcery, or as its preferred title, Super Brothers Sword and Super Brothers Sworcery. Super Brothers? It's a game. Oh, okay. Sword and Sworcery is a point and tap game available on Steam, and recommended by you, the viewer. Now, Sword and Sworcery is a beautiful and stylistic game. The graphics are gorgeous, and the music fits wonderfully. And the story, for lack of a better word, is compelling. So, what's the issue with the review? Well, it's just not that fun of a game. Now, first off, this game is obviously made for the iOS/tablet market, so that's kind of par for the course right there. Everything other than gameplay is there, and it's near perfect, but to be a game, you need gameplay. Obviously, there is some gameplay, but it's barely enough to classify this as a fantastic tablet game, let alone a great PC game. Now, if you've seen my review of Broken Age, you'll know I think a point-and-click game can be just as compelling as any other, but you had better have a bunch of fantastic locations and events, and an incredible story to fill in the gaps. Sword and Sworcery had some really fantastic locations, and the story was definitely unique. I'll get to that in a bit. But there were only a handful of locations to explore, and the majority of the gameplay revolved around backtracking. Fundamentally, Sword and Sworcery is a puzzle game. You look around the beautiful world for things to tap and or drag, and, well, that's pretty much it. Some things require you to tap in certain patterns, and other things are just a matter of tapping until it works. Combat takes a very South Park Stick of Truth approach, where you must block attacks with a quick time event and then swing while your opponent's stunned, and it's just, pretty generic, I guess. Another thing is the game is really quite short. I'm currently at about 60% completed, and I've only put about 4 hours into it. However, thanks to some of the unique characteristics of the game, it will take at least a month to fully beat it. You see, the last two main bosses revolve around the stages of the moon in the real world. So, the second boss only shows up at the new moon, and the third at a full moon. The average moon cycle is about 29.5 days, so for full completion, you will need to mark your calendars. Now, honestly, I don't know if I like this system. It seems to fall into the ever-expanding category of too artsy for its own good. I remember in film school when we watched Andy Warhol's Empire just to show us what an art film was. I made it about 5 hours and then my laptop died and I got bored. But the beauty of video games over any other art style is the game's pacing is relative to the player. Whether you're speedrunning or going for 100% completion, how fast you play the story is how fast the story progresses. But in Sword and Sworcery, you end up doing these really brief periods where you just stampede through massive quantities of the story, and then you have to sit there and wait for 2 weeks before you can do another hour and beat a boss. It's just really weird, and it's just hard having the pacing decided for you, especially in a point-and-click game. And another thing I found on the PC release was the game was really glitchy. The music would cut in and out from time to time, and some puzzles would be unsolvable until the game was restarted. And from what I've read, there's no problem on the tablet version, but yeah. As an interactive story experience, Sword and Sworcery is really quite pleasant. It's super easy and chill and just generally a really good way to relax. But as a game available on Steam, I found it somewhat lacking. Gameplay is slow and easy, and the first and second boss fights are pure copies of each other and involve nothing but quick time events. The overall game is very short compared to most point-and-click games of the era, and tying the game to real life is clever, but not necessarily a good choice. And to top it all off, the dialogue is a bit strange. I can't quite put my finger on if it's being self-referentially ironic or if it was written by a high school student, but regardless, it's just a bit off-putting. And I know I'm glancing over a bunch of hidden stuff and alternative ways of doing things, but again, it's just not very substantial overall. And without spoiling anything, the ending is quite well executed and nicely done. No joke here, it's really quite good. And yeah, so I'm not totally sure what else I can say other than why is this game that's been clearly made for iPad available on Steam? Well, okay, to be fair, Broken Age was also released on iOS, but that's a can of worms I'd rather not open right now.